Hello, my name is Greg, and I can proudly say that of all the people here at FOSSASIA today, there is a strong possibility that I know the absolute least about open source technology. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a developer. Instead, I come from the world of film and marketing. But the funny thing about that is that it actually gives me a distinct edge in helping people better explain whatever open source project it is that they're working on, and even excite others too. Here's why. Let's say you're hard at work developing your own open source project. Maybe you're contributing to an existing project with a cool new feature, or maybe you're starting completely from scratch and building something entirely from the ground up. You're finding great success in what you're creating, and you absolutely believe this open source project can change how the world uses data. You've encountered all these challenges and you've solved them, but now you're encountering an entirely new problem, a problem that I've seen the best and brightest engineers and developers struggle to solve. You're going to have to not only explain what your project is to people who don't have the slightest clue as to what you were talking about, but you're going to have to actually get them excited about it too. So they're going to be a really diverse group, Think potential investors, sales and marketing people, wary businesses who really don't want to adapt your project. Your ideal users, random people, whomever. That's a tough thing to do. Trust me, I've seen the smartest people struggle with that on a daily basis. So how do you explain and excite people who have no idea what it is that you're actually talking about? Well, don't think of it like a piece of software or technology you're talking about. Instead, pretend you're talking about a movie and market it exactly like one too. So why a movie? This is my first talk that I've ever given with a stutter, so thank you for the patience.
No worries. Pretty good.
Don't worry.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. All good.
Sort of thing. Just
If you can. I appreciate it. It's an option. Okay. So why move? So what are the challenges that you and movie studios have in common? Well, you need to excite a global audience with diverse backgrounds and tastes into actually coming in and seeing your project. Secondly, the competition is ruthless to stand out, making your project extremely difficult to do so. However, thankfully, there is a playbook that movie studios and distributors use to create excitement for their project, and you should try it for your own project too. Thank you.
share reach.
Sure. All right, so in particular, I'm going to focus on two critical aspects that studios use to create excitement and buzz for their movies, and why you should do the exact same thing too. Your tagline and your trailer. All right. So, as we said, the competition to actually get you to watch a movie is pretty intense. On Netflix alone, there's something like 3,800 movies on there, all fighting for you to watch them. Realistically, how many of those are you actually going to watch? Maybe 1% of those, especially when, thank you. Especially when there are an additional 1,800 TV shows on there filled with hours and hours of content themselves, also fighting for your attention. Are you actually going to take the time and sit through all 5,400 titles available, learning in-depth details about each and every one before you finally choose a movie or a TV show to watch? Of course not. Well, sorry.
It's good.
Yep, sure. So that puts you in a very similar situation. I've come across videos, but there's something like 3.8 million open source projects in general. Even with the Apache Software Foundation, there's something like 300 active projects alone too. That's a lot of competition. The average person is not going to sit through each and every single one of those Apache projects there on the left to find out more, especially when they may know very little, if anything, about open source to begin with. So, well, film studios know this about their own projects too. People aren't going to commit to watching a movie without being nudged and enticed first. But with so much competition, how do you stand out and begin that user journey for getting them to ultimately watching your project? First things first, everything starts with your tagline. It's a 1 or 2 sentence pitch that is meant to intrigue about your project. At this phase, you have maybe 1 or 2 seconds at most to hook your audience in, or they're going to move on to the next project. Put yourself in the shoes of the casual viewer. They're going to browse through hundreds of different projects, and they're not going to stop and read a full description about each and every one. So you have to throw whatever you can at them to get them to stop on your project and hook them in. So some of the best examples in film history with Alien. In space, no one can hear you scream. Recently with Napoleon. He came from nothing, he conquered everything. With Jaws, you'll never go in the water again. You know, you'll notice that none of these taglines actually sum up what it is that these movies are actually about. They're just meant to intrigue you enough so that you'll stop scrolling and leave you wanting to learn more about this project. At this stage, you're literally just fighting among hundreds of other projects to get people's attentions, which is in very short supply. So what makes a good tagline? Remember, the goal here is to stand out by intriguing people, and you only have a few seconds at most to do this. You're not explaining what the project is, but you are playing on people's emotions to get them wanting, or better yet, demanding to know more. So why aren't you actually explaining what your project actually is? Take a look at the film, the Social Network. It's about the origins of Facebook. You know, a perfectly adequate tagline for this is the story about the creation of Facebook from launching in a Harvard dorm room to the tech giant that it is today. It works. There's nothing wrong with that tagline, but it literally tells us the full movie in one sentence. So this is what they did instead. You don't get to 500 million friends without making a few enemies. Now, which of those taglines would you actually want is going to get you to want to take that vital first step and learn more? Probably this one. I was working on a new feature for one of Instacluster's open source technologies, and I finally settled on this for my tagline. You won't need it for every instance, but when you do, you'll notice the difference right away. So why did I specifically choose this? Well, it's hard to stand out, even with an established and popular open source tech like this one is. So I decided to intrigue people to it and leave the audience demanding to know more, and what that I'm. So I knew that when I presented my tagline, when I announced it on LinkedIn and other social media, that this would be the only thing that people would see unless they clicked more. The goal at this stage is to get as many people as I possibly can to actually stop and check out my project, even if it's just for a brief second. You know, do I think that each and every who saw my post was ultimately interested in my open source project? Nope. But the fact that they chose to at least check out my project makes me more successful than the overwhelming majority of those other posts that they saw. Hey, you know, you have to remember, you know, none of these taglines gave away what the movies themselves are actually about, but they were still highly successful in building excitement and growing that audience. All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to speed things up. So, all right, After you've established your tagline, you're gonna have to move on to your trailer. So you need to use this to convince audience to go on an adventure with you and play into that emotion of what they're missing out on if they stay on the sidelines. Basically, you just need to create FOMO. So step one, you just need to establish the scene. How did you establish on this project? What hooked you into devoting all your time into creating this? Step two, create the villain. That is, what is forcing your action? What problem are you trying to solve? Who or what is it that forced you to go on this open source journey? And then step three, end with the possibility of hope. What is the ultimate prize here? What are you up against, and how are you battling these? So a great example of trailers is the MCU, so the Marvel Cinematic Universe. These films, it's notoriously complicated to follow along about who's in what era, who's popping up when, all that stuff. But the trailer skips all of those details of that complicated stuff and leaves that for the movie itself. And you know what? It works. Why? Because they break each trailer up into the identifiable parts. You know who the hero is, you know who the villain is, you can see the problem that the hero is up against in the battle that they're fighting, and ultimately you're hooked on why you want to see that. You are in the exact same situation. There is a wide swath of people who aren't going to know at all what you are talking about, but you can still excite them with a trailer or an elevator pitch and get them on board to your actual project. So how did I create my own trailer? Well, so with step one, and in this sense, my trailer, it was a new blog series that I created. I said, things can and often do go wrong with data, but trying to plan for those unknown scenarios where disaster strikes is pretty much impossible. There has to be a better way. Step two, I created my villain. The cost of having storage and speed needed is prohibitively expensive. No matter what, you're never going to get the budget that you want. It's just too expensive. And step three, I created hope. What if there was a way to get the speed that we need and bring costs down by integrating our new feature into open source? If successful, this could be a total game changer. So I use this to hook people in to what I say is to get to my movie, which is get them to Instant Cluster, check out our product, play around with it, literally get them to that cinema. So I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You don't need highly technical details to build excitement for your open source project. You'll be writing blogs, making pitch decks, doing ads, all this, just having casual conversations, maybe even talking at a conference. It can be daunting. Trust me. It can. That's why I follow the same playbook when I learned when I worked in the film industry. Competition is ruthless. You have multiple challenges along the way to hook people in. Just remember the user journey. Stand out with a tagline, excite with a trailer, and get them to your final project. And just to end with saying, treat your open source project like a major cinematic event. The people you'll need to grow your community may not understand a single technical thing that you are talking about, but that's okay. Not everyone sitting in that cinema there is going to understand 100% about what's going on in that movie, but they're still excited about what's in front of them. You can build that exact same excitement for your own project. Just pretend it's a movie and watch your community grow.